Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone. This is Sam Namora here, and I'm delighted today to have with me a very special guest, Imam Bukhari and Hajar Sain. These are very well promising future community leader, in my opinion. Maybe they're already community leaders. We have an issue on hand that really need to be discussed. I think we all aware of the the incidents that took place in the Northeast school at the Kamjama. And for me personally, to see almost 60 young students gathering in one voice and saying it as loud as possible, requesting us to listen by saying our voice must be heard. So that call to hear them out, it was loud enough for me and others, I guess, to have this conversation and to have a conversation that maybe some of us they're not comfortable with, but I think time has come to talk about issues that affect us all. So I'm gonna sit quiet as much as possible and let the guests to speak, and I would like to learn from them as well. And I'm gonna start with Iman. Hi, Iman. Salam alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Thanks very much, Iman and Hajar, both for accepting this invite to be with me tonight. So, Iman, if you don't mind, what was the first reactions that came to mind when you saw that global TV report about a very loud call saying our voices must be heard? Do you think that call touched you the way it touched me or touched others?
Definitely, I have to say, my first reaction was that I was really proud of the kids that went out and spoke the truth, because this is a reality. There is a big racism problem in our community, in the Muslim community, especially in regards to anti-Blackness. So I was actually really proud, because I know how brave you have to be to actually speak that out. And from my personal experience, I went to a school that was majority Arab as well. So Al Medina school quite a few years ago when I was in junior high. And I saw it all the time. Like, racism was a consistent problem. There was a lot of favoring from students, from teachers, sorry, towards students of Arab descent. And the majority of them were Lebanese. So it was considering that aspect as well. And I remember a lot of kids, brought this up to to teachers, that there was a lot of bullying happening from students, as well as teachers weren't taking their concerns seriously, and nothing ever happened. So I'm so happy these conversations are happening, and I really, really hope that the teachers as well as admin are taking this very seriously.
So this is another word. This is something not new to you. I mean, you kind of experience it yourself in a way, or in different circumstances.
Yeah, definitely. It's not new. I am of Pakistani descent, so South Asian brown people, and I saw a lot of anti-blackness. I will say, I'm obviously
Mm.
not black, but I saw a lot of anti-blackness happening towards classmates and other folks. But even towards my community, the brown community, we consistently had to deal with a lot of racist bullying on the fact that we weren't Arab. And I
Right,
mean, because Arabs come in all colors too, right? So
right,
like
right.
light ones and their
I
dark
like
ones.
I like your word racist bullying, because definitely there's a really a community is kind of divided between just a form of racism, or this is just bullying at the school. And if you don't mind, I'm gonna move to Hajar to take her listen to her take on this. So tell me, Hajar, same thing. What was your first impression when you saw that report about these young students like
Oh,
speaking in one voice?
absolutely. First impression, extremely proud. So proud of these kids. And I think it was just absolutely beautiful to see how articulate, how incredibly poised they were, how intelligent they were. It was beautiful to see. And it made me feel happy, because the future is bright. Like,
It
these
is
are,
bright, yeah, exactly.
yeah, these are our future community leaders. So it was fantastic. Like Iman, the subject matter was not surprising. I did not go to like the Islamic schools here in Alberta, but I went to Islamic schools in Ontario, and the problems are
Hmm.
the same, right? And then so the issues are the same. So anti-Blackness and the racism and discrimination, racist bullying, off the cuff remarks. So a lot of the hate, like the hurtful comments are usually off the cuff remarks. People just making remarks thinking they're nothing, right? People saying words they shouldn't be saying. I speak Arabic, so they'll say something like, don't worry about it, we're doing this, like hal abd over there, right? And you're just like, who? Hal what? Like they're talking to you, but they'll call that person abd, which means like slave in English, right? But it's said without thinking. And then when you point it out, they'll be like, oh, kullana abid Allah. We're all, the slaves of Allah. We're all worshippers of Allah. And I'm like, but that's not what you meant by it. So no, I'm not taking that. And so these things happened, like, every now and then here, comments, remarks. And I think what happens is that when you have a group of people who are homogenous, right? We're all coming in as Muslim students. That's one thing that makes us one thing. And then we're not split up on the religious sense, but we start splitting up on the cultural sense. Because all of a sudden, right, we're Muslim, but I'm Sudanese, you're Lebanese, you're Pakistani, you're Irani, and we're very clear where different people are. And then there's cliques, and then these cliques grow, and then there's power dynamics and how, who pays for the schools. So we have to be able to talk about like all these different dynamics. So predominantly, who are the people who have money, who send their kids to the school, but on top of that, who donate ridiculously to the school, right? Because these communities have been around for a while, others are not the same. And so therefore, there's all these bits and pieces and representation. So I think with these kids, when they're talking about like they're being treated the same way, representation, something we talk about all the time is a lot of times in Islamic schools, there isn't really a representation of many different people all the time. It's a lot more one community taken care of, and it's usually friends and family and stuff like that. So I think it's fantastic that this conversation started. I think it's great these students spoke up. This is the same issue that's happening not just in the Islamic schools system, it's happening in the public school system, it's happening in the Catholic school system, and it's a conversation we're living within society that we must be having as a Muslim community as well, because social justice is part of our deen. So
and not only that, I guess even us as a Muslims, we are subject to this discrimination and racism. I don't want to say on a daily basis, but we're a victim of racism and discriminations, and we've been targeted for years. So it's a little bit, and that's what we, we need to have this conversation, so at least we are truthful to ourselves and truthful to our cause, because we cannot ask other people to acknowledge the wrongdoing, and then a few of us are doing that and we're silent about that. So we do need to address it in a positive way. So we're gonna acknowledge that, because these kids, as you said, Hajar, they spoke in a really beautiful, eloquent, strong, very promising way. I was really, as you said, part of me happy that I'm seeing these young Muslims talking like that, and the other side is, it's really sad, because I know how sensitive is that. So Iman, a question, I'm going to pass the question to you. It seems to me like what happened at the school was done in the school for the reason of the schools and all that stuff that we know, what the school says, and acknowledged they're already aware of it, but obviously they need to do more. My question to you is, because you said this is like 15 some years ago, or maybe 20, or maybe longer than that, these phenomena or these symptoms is still obviously it's happening again. The question is, do you see a progress, a change, even a slight change within the community to acknowledge that problem, or you think it's still lagging, or it's still at the same level, or maybe worse?
Yeah, so definitely, I haven't been in junior high for like 15 years now, so it's been quite some time, but I would say this problem is older than 15 years. I think it's just even in the foundations of a school, starting from like basically having students of one race or like one type of race starting out as being a majority, it already has that environment in order for hate to grow, and in this case, racism. In terms of your question about, sorry, I can't remember.
Yeah, are we evolving? Are we learning from our previous experiences as a community when it comes to discrimination or race, or this internal struggle?
It's interesting because I look at some of the kids I went to school with, and I received a lot of racist bullying, including physical and emotional assaults, not just towards me, but also other people of color as well, beyond Arabs, that is. And we saw a lot happening, and I see like this new generation, Generation Z, being very woke in the sense that they really care about issues, particularly social issues. But at the same time, I don't think much is changing. I think we're having more conversations, but I don't think it's getting through. And the problem here is that it's the system, you know, because it's like when I think about, you know, the big bullies, the big racist bullies that I experienced, it was maybe 5 boys and 5 girls, you know, but like it wasn't the rest of the class, which had like 25 other kids, but they were popular and they were the majority. They were mainly Lebanese during my time anyway, but they were the Arabs. They had parents, you know, who were, whether donating or volunteering their time, they were well known in the community. And then they had that power, right? Like other kids looked up to them because they're like, hey, they're the popular kids. And that's how it started. So I feel like that cycle is continuing. Sure, that generation has moved on and they went to university, and some of them actually became a lot nicer. Some of them did. But this cycle keeps continuing. So I don't think we're getting any better, to be honest. I know these conversations are happening, and we're talking about Islamophobia and racism just, you know, just towards the Muslim broad population. But the truth is that internally, I don't think we're even recognizing. We refuse to talk about it. And I can talk about my own community too. The Pakistani community has a lot of anti-Blackness, and a lot of us refuse to talk about it as well, because they will bring up like, oh, you're just, you know, we're already facing Islamophobia. Don't bring this other thing and make us look negative. We need to have this conversation in order for things to get better. So yeah, I think there's a lot of improvement to do. We are not even close to doing enough as we should be.
We're not, eh? Hajar, do you think? I mean, let's talk about that. The issue from a Muslim perspective, instead of, I mean, from your take on it from a broader perspective when it comes to Muslims, not like Arabs, Pakistanis, Sudanese, and all this stuff. When you say there's a Black Muslims issues, and probably that's really what it is, because we all here Muslims, and we have a common interest, and we have a common responsibility to work together. So if you don't mind, just share some of your thought on that with me.
Absolutely. When the Black Lives Matter started, right? I'm always working on anti-racism and discrimination, but during that time, it's just like, you know, there's a lot going on. So I pumped out a lot more content than I usually do. And I never use Instagram. I used to sit there in the back. And one of the first things I started pumping out, I started sharing a lot of things that are going on, a lot of things that are happening. I started getting messages from my own fellow non-Black Muslims, right? And then they'll send me messages. Some will tell me, you know, they're disappointed that I am supporting Black Lives Matter. They're telling me that it's Islamically incorrect because they don't follow the Aqidah. They're a leftist group who want to destroy religion, and I'm being sheep following it. They're going to, you know, if I'm complaining about what's happening, complaining quote unquote about the racism that's going on, is I'm going against the will of Allah, because, you know, Allah katab kida, Allah ordained this. Like, why am I arguing against what's written for me, right? Another one is like, you know, Islamically, I should follow the authority and the power, the people who are in power. I should not question it. This is like, what I'm doing is going against the Islamic law. And then I'm almost like, I always say it's my most favorite one. I'm being told, like, you know how you're a Muslim first. I don't know why you're talking about Black people issues. So these were the things that were happening when I started posting about these things. And then I think, and it just pushed me to write about it. And to me, the top thing that I got out of it is people started using the deen as a shield against self-reflection. So people, every time I'm like, okay, let's talk about racism, but Islam has no racism. Don't talk to me. I'm just like, but that's not how it works. That's not how it works. You know, I know the ayahs, La farqa bayna Arabiyyin wa Ajamiyyin illa bittaqwa. Allah says that there's no difference between an Arab or a non-Arab except for their piety, right? There's the other ayah, I don't know it by heart, but then when it talks about shu'uban wa qabail, so we created you as nations and tribes, right? And the best of you is the one with Allah, is the, you know, the most generous of you is the best of you in the eyes of Allah. Here it is. I'm going to say it outright. Zero beef with the deen. Zero problem with the deen. I know my deen. My deen elevated my status. My deen gave me rights. You know, it gave me freedoms. It gave me respect and it gave me love. My annoyance comes with human beings, bashar, right? Ma'mulin min teen, made of clay, who are coming and taking my godly given rights from me and then trying to use God to keep it away from. It makes no sense. It makes zero sense. And so when we come talk about it within the Muslim community, and it's mentioned before, is like, you know, we're going through so much. Hajar, we go through Islamophobia. That's enough. Like, let's not talk about it because it's issues. We are going to talk about it because this is Muslim people issues. This is an ummah issue, right? People who come tell me that this is not an ummah issue, this is not a justice issue. If you don't see it, then you are the problem, because this is the ummah issue. This is a justice issue. And so when we come to talk about these things, when we come to talk about anti-racism, anti-discrimination, we're told, like, you know, you're being too sensitive. You're overreacting to what's being said. That was not what's being meant. You know, Hajar, come on, why you're so mad? Sahibna Bilal ibn Rabaha, I love the Sahabi Bilal ibn Rabaha. I love him so much. But again, lazy religious Islamic shield. You're just gonna pull out a name of the only black Sahabi you know, and you're gonna say that to me. Be like, this is how Islam treats. I'm not talking about the deen. I'm talking about Muslims who are humans, who have cultures and traditions and prejudices and thought processes and all these things that need to change. And we have to have these conversations, because if we want to move forward as a ummah, we want to be the people of justice. We want to be the people who exemplify and follow in the footsteps of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We need to speak truth to power, and we need to face the truth, and we need to be reflective human beings. So if we never self-reflect, we'll never grow. So this 100%. Is so this is what I gotta say.
So just like Iman says, I mean, I just want to add to what you said. Even this is not a real. This is Deen is and our teachings of Islam is so clear on this. So we don't want to use it as a shield to deny the kind of disease we have, which is really has nothing to do with the religion, and it has nothing to do with Arabs, as you said, in every culture. Like even within the same race, there's so many issues. We can discriminate cities, villages, towns. As Iman says, within the Pakistani community, there's some kind of like a racial divide. I'm sure in Sudan the same thing. I mean, I heard it like from Sudanese. Oh, you're in the north, we're in the south. Syrian, the same thing. Yeah, this is from the Al Jazeera. This is from the city. Different coastal, whatever stuff. But for some reason, when it comes to acknowledging the existence of racism, then it becomes like really you are bombarded by a denial that it exists, and not only denial, but even to the point where you are not even even if you speak about it, if you want to even address it in a civilized way, people might make you feel that you are really creating a problem for the community. It's not like only dividing the community, but you are making a community look bad, and that's where we stuck here. It's aib. It's aib. Don't say this. You're making us look bad. But on the other end, Iman, it's there, and we just witnessed almost a 60 bright students in one voice saying to us, listen to what's happening to us, and our voices must be heard. And that's what we're trying to make sure, are we really hearing that? So for those who, I understand we're not gonna solve a problem, but we want to start a dialogue. For those who deny the existence of these issues, Iman, what are you going to say to them? And I think we might have some of them joining us now or later. So for those who deny, literally say it did not exist, this issue of racism, it does not exist, Iman. So what's your simple answer to that?
For one thing, I want to say that every single human being on earth has bias in them. And this is essentially something that we get from the time we're like 6 months. And for example, I have a baby and she only spent time with me because of COVID-19. So she's literally only ever seen brown people, very close to even my skin tone of brown. So automatically, I went to the mall the other day, I had to get something. I had to take her with me. She saw people of different color and she was scared. Like you saw her reaction. She's 1 year old now. She's like confused, so that's like a natural bias that she's developed, and these are instincts, but she's a baby, so it's obviously different because of COVID-19, but all of us have bias, so we cannot deny that we don't have bias in us. We have different types of bias, so that's one thing. And other things, if I can just quickly list like a few really short quick examples to tell you how this is a systemic issue. So when I was in school, I consistently saw, because most of our teachers are Arab, so I consistently saw them favoring Arab students. So how did that come to be? I think when you have connections with people, like cultural connections, you automatically start having more conversations with them. You have more, and a lot of times they'd speak in Arabic, and what does that result in? Because when a student would be like, hey, this person has actually just beat me up, and called me a dirty packy, can you help me? You're going to talk to that student, and then automatically, how did the conversation go? The teacher would start talking to a teacher, to the person. The conversation automatically turned into Arabic, something that a lot of other students couldn't understand, like myself. So I didn't even know what was going on. And by the end of it, the 2-3 minute conversation, the student is sitting back. I don't know what was discussed in the 2-3 minutes. Nobody asked. And this consistently, happened. I saw a lot of Arab students bullying brown and black kids. I like from something as serious as throwing somebody in a trash can to kicking them. I can't even tell you how many times I personally had to endure physical violence during my time. Comparing your skin color to poop, racial slurs, whether it's the N-word, calling somebody monkey, packy, there's so many different words that you could say. If somebody's eating their cultural food, putting that down, like the standard of acceptance was like Arab food and Arab culture essentially, and consistently being told that your race is inferior. This was the number one thing that happened every single day, because I don't speak Arabic, because the Quran was released in Arabic, so automatically I'm not like superior or whatever. I mean, everyone's equal, but consistently having that. And I just want to give one last example of how systemic this was, because I will never forget this. A student in my class, several students in my class were Somali, not several, but like 3-4 were Somali. And the teacher was literally having an argument to the Somali kids, telling them that their language is actually Arabic, not Somali. Like putting them down for their actual language, and then telling them that they are mixed with Arabs. That's why they look the way that they do. One thing that one teacher said was that, why do you think your nose looks that way? Look at the rest of Africa. They have big noses, but Somalis don't, because they're mixed with Arabs. And you know what my friend said? She said, my nose is smaller than any of the Arabs here. So I don't know what you're talking about. And I remember just like laughing, because I'm like, take that, and like she got bullied afterwards, and the Arab kids started making fun of her. But like, why are you putting someone in this situation? And before anybody says these are very specific students examples, I'm trying to tell you how it's systemic, because this is a teacher doing it. This is an administration doing it, because when you told on a student, they would go to the office sometimes if they ever get in trouble. But you know what? Their parent is a volunteer. Their parent is a funder. Nothing happens. They're back in class. And you know what? After school, they're beating the crap out of the student that got them in trouble. And this is how systemic it is. And no, we are telling admins, we've told them several times, but nothing actually happens. So what else are you supposed to do? You're going to have a protest. Media is going to cover it, as they should. And this is how conversations are going to start, because when we take them to the classroom and the office, nothing happens.
So true. And I prefer personally that we talk about it and try to find solutions for it and acknowledge it instead of seeing other media outlets. We don't want to see Fox News reporting on these matters, and we might as well talk to these talk and address it. Iman, Hajar, what's your take on what you just heard? This is for me. I mean, I'm so sorry. I mean, obviously, she still remember those even 10, 15 years after. This is how much the hurt is. It hurts. So you can remember it all these years. So, if you can add if you can just any reflection on what Iman says from your perspective.
Okay, so one, it takes a whole lot of bravery to kind of face a lot of trauma and issues. So thank you for sharing, Iman, because I think a lot of the times when we talk about these issues and people bring up their personal stories of what's, I'll correct that, personal realities, right, of what's happening, is that people then look at it as, well, it was just you, right? But Iman is, unfortunately, one of many, right? And so experiences within Islamic school. When I went to Islamic school in London, Ontario, right? When we first moved to Canada, I was 9 years old. I spoke no English, I spoke Arabic. So my parents decided, my parents decided that I should go to the Islam. Sorry, I just saw a comment and I was trying to answer it, but then I'm not going to answer it. And so what happens is, I went to the school. I only spoke Arabic, and my parents were like, "You're going to go there. You're going to learn Arabic. You're going to learn the deen, because to speak Arabic, at least you're not going to have a hard time when you go to those schools." And I'm like, "Absolutely, let's do this." And so when we go, so my parents didn't think about, like, my different skin color is going to play a role in how treatment and how things are going to be like in school. Mm-hmm. And it played a huge role, right? Lots of fighting, lots of things. It came to the point when we went to the masjid to go study, the kids wouldn't pray next to me because then, they'll say Hajar, like Haja, Black Haja, but I didn't speak English. I didn't comprehend what's being said. And then when I learned English, I just retroactively punished everybody. I just went back and I'm like, I remember what you said. Now I know what it means, punch, right? Because I didn't have the ability to speak English very fluently. When I was able then to speak English, then fighting kind of went down, right? Because fight or flight. But what happens is that I went to public school, didn't get any better. Like, it's not that I left this, I went to public school and it wasn't any better, right? And when I came from Sudan, when I was Hajar, and I was just Hajar. I came here and I all of a sudden had to learn that I was Black, right? And that's something that I never had to deal with when I was in Sudan, because I was Hajar, and Hajar Ibrahim Abdel Nabi, this is who she was, this is how it worked. And then I came here, and then there's a completely different idea of what Blackness is. Your entire essence gets erased, and then you're given this identity that I have to reconcile. I'm still reconciling with. And I think you start thinking, okay, where do I fit? How do I fit in? What do I do? And where do I go? And with all these bits and pieces, and then you fall into, I personally was like, okay, I'm going to be Muslim. I'm going to fall into the deen piece of it, because at least that's something I could grasp and understand. But then you go, you go to the masjid and the racist politics that take place there all the time. And I'm, point blank, we go to the masajid right now, and Sam, you probably noticed it too. The number of Black Muslims who are going to the masajid has dwindled. They opened their own masajid, right? They go, there's an Oromo masjid, there is a masjid, the Somali community does it by itself. I know the Sudanese community is trying to pray in their own area by themselves, and they're slowly just leaving, right? Because all these incidents that happen, people are slowly leaving away. And the masjid, another name for it is the Jama'. Right? It's the hub. It's the heart of the community. It is the gatherer, al-jama'. It is the gathering spot. And what's happening in the masajid, a lot of the times, people are just not feeling welcome. They don't really like it. And they slowly go and they try to find their own places. And so I think what happens is that whenever we come to talk about racism and discrimination, when it comes to the community, when we're talking about it, when it's happening within our schools, when it's happening in our masajid, when it's happening, is we tend to want to separate it into, it's different than when we're facing an Islamophobia. And when it's happening in the community, pinpoint the people who do it. Tell us the 4 or 5 people who did it, and then we deal with them. But the problem, like Iman said, is systemic. It's so much more deeper. And a lot of the times it's done unconsciously, these biases. And I'm seeing, and then, because I shouldn't be looking at the comments, but I'm seeing in the comments a couple of people saying things like, well, people should learn Arabic. Right? Yeah. The religion comes to Arabic.
I'm trying not to, I'm trying not to bring the comment, because I don't want to have, we want to listen to you, because it's not easy for you to speak. And I do appreciate your time. I really do.
But I think the number one thing is, and Iman said it very, very well, right? She doesn't speak Arabic. That does not take away from her Muslimhood. That does not make her less of a Muslim. Just because I speak Arabic. Actually, if we talk about the deen and how good deeds work, the fact that I know how to speak Arabic, I know how to read Arabic, when I read the Quran, I get my good deeds. She gets more good deeds than I do, because Arabic is not her language to begin with. And the difficulty, she puts extra work, she gets extra good deeds for it. And so this idea of, we talk about superiority, but this idea is like, because I speak it, because we were chosen. There is no chosen people, right? This is the poison that gets us all the time. This idea of we're the chosen ones. There is no chosenness, right? And so the moment we start talking about these issues, and we're not going to talk about, we did mention some communities like Lebanese community, or let's say Syrian community, or whatever, right? Or Sudanese community. But the problem is it's a lot more encompassing and it's so much deeper. So the moment we pinpoint the Sudanese community and we work with them, then we'll realize, oh, this other community also has a problem. It's a much bigger one that we need to talk about. So I think we need to, the conversation when we're talking about it, that chosen piece, that feeling of like, but it came to us first, right? This is, I think, some of the conversations, and Iman, you touched on that really well, in which this idea of like, you should know how to speak Arabic, or, you're Arab to begin with. Al-Arabiyya, it's great. It's an honor if you have it, and it's an honor if you don't. We're all unique.
Well, I just want to say something, so at least we're clear on that. So, and maybe I'm going to get myself in a little bit of heat because of saying this, but again, the truth has to be said. And being Arabs only is not really a privilege, because we know the most vicious enemies of Islam were Arab too back in the days. So just because if you're Arabi, that doesn't make you automatically better Muslims. In my opinion, you have more obligation, in my opinion, because you speak the language. So that means really you have more to do versus somebody who had to learn the Arabic to do the furud, or at least to communicate with the rest of the Muslims. So just because you're Arabic doesn't give you that privilege. I would say it give you now you have more, in my opinion, you have more responsibility than just privileges, which is we disagree with that anyway, and that's why the teaching of Islam is so clear. So we don't want to use it, as you said, we don't want to use religion now to say, you know what, we're all Muslims, just to deny the existence of these problems. For me, just because I'm Arabs, that's not enough reason to make anybody feel different. Just like somebody who's white look at me and look at my big nose and try to say, you know what, you're different, you're Arabs. Even we've been discriminated because you're Arabs. Like, I have a comment here from Malaka, if you don't mind. I would really like to share it, because that will really give a perspective on the issue from a different different angle. If you don't mind, like my kids went to Islamic school in Ottawa, where the majority of the students at that school were Black. Ironically, my kids were bullied by Black students because my kids were Arabs and white. So here you go, we're talking about a student who completely feel discriminated from a different angle. Just like Bangladeshi person, when you go to Pakistan, they feel like discriminated left, right, and center. Just like a Kurdish comes to the Arab side and feel like discriminated left, right, and center. So really, we do have these, because especially the Islam is such a 1.6 billion people, and it's a vast territories in terms of and races. So like for me, I was as you said, Hajar, you were born in Sudan, I was born in Syria. Everybody look like me. I don't have the issues with quote unquote races or different people or they look like us, but we chose to come to a different places, which is we see different kind of people, different kind of ethnic background, different kind of even practicing of Islam, and I think we're having that internal struggle. Like they don't look like us, so we treat them differently. But I think we're facing the problem is not only we treat them differently, we give ourselves the right to say we are superior because of whatever the reason, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's why talking, acknowledging the problem, I think this is gonna help us all. Sorry, I'm taking your time. I'm not supposed to talk because I want to listen.
No, please talk, because I think this makes the conversation so much better. I think I just would like to add a little bit piece is that when we're having this conversation is sparked by the protest that happened at the Islamic school.
Right.
But this is not the first time this conversation has been had in the community. I'm positive of that. I think the community has tried to have the conversation several times. It's been brought up. People want to talk about it. I think this time it just worked out so well that we're all kind of in the know. And I think social media plays an incredibly beautiful part in trying to get everybody on it. And I think what happens is that the focus and a lot of the conversations that I'm hearing around this is everyone immediately is going into defense mode, because like every conversation we have about racism, everyone immediately says, but I'm not racist. Therefore, what you're talking about is not true. I don't know anybody who's like this. I don't understand what you're talking about. This is not happening. And you're denying a truth that is happening because you did not experience it, or you believe that you're not doing it. And this is one of the major problems whenever because you asked Iman the question is like, when people tell you racism doesn't exist, this is it. Is because they equate life to what they think is real, right? To what they think is happening. And then when something bad happens to them, it's a unique opportunity. It's a, mas'ala shakhsiya. It's a personal issue, and you're making it seem so much bigger, and they don't see the bigger picture of how the system plays a role. And so I think when we're talking about this conversation, this is not, and I could see it. Like, I don't have to read the comments. I don't do nothing. I could see it coming from a mile away. People immediately taking this conversation and be like, you're attacking Arab people because you just don't like Arab people. And Arab people are just going to be attacked. And wallahi, we're not terrible. And breathe. We're talking about racism and discrimination within the community. Individuals who have power in the community who come in and then treat others who don't have it, who are not within the same group, who do this. So whether the school is predominantly Black Islamic school and they treat Arab kid bad, that's wrong. Whether it's a predominantly Arab school that's treating non-Arab students bad, whether it's a predominantly a Southeast Asian school which they're treating other students bad, we're talking about racism and discrimination generally in the community. And I think the defensive piece, and then where the conversation gets lost, is that immediately everyone starts going about, look, how come about that person, about that person, and about that person? And then again, and I'm going to repeat it over and over again, comes in the lazy religious pieces, right? It's like, we shouldn't even be talking about racism because racism doesn't even exist in Islam. Why are we having this conversation? This conversation is moot. So I think, it's not important. And so therefore, I think this is where we need to talk about, is like, this is something that is happening. These are behaviors that are going on, and it's so much bigger than just a specific individual group. It is something that is embedded. And Iman mentioned at the beginning, Iman said, she's like, I'm talking about anti-Blackness in her own community as well, right? And racism and discrimination within her own community as well, discriminatory behaviors in my own community as well. But we're talking about discriminatory behavior that actually changes someone's life completely because of the power structure that was there, and makes it extremely, extremely painful. So I think that's what everybody needs to understand, is that this conversation is so much bigger than just you as an individual. This is something that is happening, and denying that it's happening is part of the problem.
And sorry, can I just add to the comment that was there, the one that you just shared a little while ago? Really just adding on to what Hadra said, because she just did an excellent job. I really just I want people to understand what racism actually is, because as Hadra consistently said, power systems, it's a system and it has to have power. So unless if people in an administration have that power, then there's something called racial discrimination, which is just, I can be racist to you, you can be racist to me based off of our race. But then actual racism, you have to have power. It's not just interpersonal, because there's one thing that's systemic. When you have power, it's systemic. When it's interpersonal, like a Black kid being mean to an Arab kid, that's interpersonal. So you need to actually see who are the people in power here. And the reality is, the Arab community has been in Canada much longer than the Muslim Black community, or the South Asian community and whatnot. So naturally, the communities that are more established, that have been here the longest, are going to have that power because they have more support. They've been, they've kind of had that community support already. So naturally, they're going to have more power. And it's about, sharing that power, not just keeping it within one community. And I also just want to say, actually, most kids don't tell their parents. Did I tell my dad that I was going through this, that I was getting beat up every day by a whole bunch of Lebanese kids in my school? No, I was a teenager. I was 13 to 15 at the time. I'm not going to tell my parents. For one thing, teenagers don't share anyway. And also, it's embarrassing. I don't want my parents to know I got beat up by boys in my school because I have shit-colored skin. Sorry for the swear word, but that was a consistent reminder in my 3 years of going there that my skin color was close to that. Even though, that makes no sense, but whatever. I just wanted to bring that up, that just because you're not hearing about it and you're just using that personal experience of this person said that person said this. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, my kids have never experienced that. You actually don't know that, because if you think your kids share everything with you, you're wrong. I'm sorry, but you're wrong. I just wanted to put that forward.
But also, I think we need to put it in perspective. Just because you were at the Medina school, which has happened at the Islamic school, and at that time, I mean, I understand, especially in the 90s and whatever. I mean, in order to teach in Islamic school, you need to speak Arabic, and in speak Arabic, most likely, what they're going to be coming from Arabic countries, or somebody who study Arabic. So it's technically, in order to teach Arabic, most likely that the Arab teacher is going to be there, and which has happened that way. But if you go to any other Catholic schools, public schools, whatever schools, there's always issues that let kids get into argument, into a fight, and into stuff. Just like one of the guys told me today, he says, Sam, and he's a Muslim, he's a well-known community leader. He said, Sam, do you know how much racism I had to go through when I was growing up in public schools? Like, there was no Muslims except me, and everybody was calling me names. So the symptoms, it's everywhere. So we don't want to make it sound like, oh, it's only us that we're suffering from this. I mean, and that's why really it's so important to talk about it, because we're not immune. We're not perfect, as you said. Everybody's biased one way or another. Iman. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I don't know what the question is, but I completely...
No, I didn't ask the questions, but I'm gonna go into it. Do you? And this is I'm gonna bring the next point that I really have in mind. We do have issues that we need to talk about. We do have some form of racism exists, whether to what degree we just don't know. We're trying to diagnose we try to talk about it. So hopefully the professionals, the specialists, the community leaders, I don't want to say the mashayikh, maybe the khutbah and all that stuff is going to start addressing these issues. But I'm just hearing that some people might be using this innocent messages that came out of the Muslim schools, the Islamic school in Calgary, to score point politically. And that's where I feel the adult might try to do some political gain to make sure to make it sound like, oh, this is like a management issues, this is an administration issues, this is just related to some kind of a group of people or individuals. And do you see it going in that way, or some people try to play it that way, play in that card, I should say? Iman, that's a question for you.
Definitely. I think, when you look at the issue of racism or anti-Blackness in general, like even beyond the Muslim community, you're seeing a lot of politics. The city of Calgary, for example, committed to anti-racism, but then we've seen a lot of incidents continuously happen. We've seen people go out on the streets with tiki torches, lots of, racist people that are evidently racist. There's no doubt about it. Are the police authorities not doing anything? Yep, they're not doing anything about it. We see a lot of people being like, I'm an anti-racist, this is important, blah, 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 and they don't actually do anything about it. This is opportunists, these are opportunists, and I'm sure that this is going to happen in this case too, where people are going to say, this is so important, la, la, la. But you know what? We actually need to hold them accountable. And that's the bigger issue here. You need to be an ally. I need to be an ally. You need to be an ally. We all need to be an ally, particularly to the Black community in this case, because honestly, it's a well-known fact. And if anybody denies it, there is so much anti-Blackness in every culture, including the Black community, for various reasons, such as colonialism and even like before colonialism. If we look at that, like the idea in South Asian culture that white skin is beautiful is like before even Christianity and Judaism was released into this world. So or the idea of it. So it's very old, this idea that we have, and it's very oppressive. And if we deny that anti-Blackness exists in our culture, I need every single person that's watching this right now to ask themselves this question. If you as a person have a child, or might have a child, or can think you have a child, let's say a daughter, are you really okay with them marrying a Black man? Like, ask yourself this. And some of you will say yes, but I know several people that will say no. And this is me being straight honest. And the reason for that is that this idea of beauty and intelligence and whatever that we have is associated with our race and our culture to each race. Like I know for a fact this is a thing in my community. Everybody wants a white-skinned daughter-in-law, light hair, light eyes. That's a big thing. Like in my culture, that's a huge thing. And I've seen that consistently in every culture. So we need to do our job, and we need to hold our politicians accountable, and as well as any community leaders. We need every sheikh in Calgary to be talking about this and making systemic changes. And what does that look like? Systemic changes look like looking at the foundations of our masjid and seeing who is in power, who actually makes the rules. Is it just the Arab communities? Is it the different communities? And then talking to people, talking to Black people, talking to brown people, whoever else, about how can we make you feel included?
Right.
This shouldn't be like an awkward conversation. We're just talking about our community being united.
So true. But the reason I'm saying this, and I agree with every word you said, some people might, we acknowledge the existence of this racism one way or another. I mean, if it's a larger scale, smaller scale, that need to be studied and need to be discussed by a professional. But some community members trying to rally people within the community on that, based on these accusations of we are less representative, we've been discriminated, and it's time for us to stand up for our right. Not because we want to fix the problem, is we want to take share of the, not share the power as much as like use that as an excuse to rally people to score influence, to gain influence, to gain power, and all this stuff. So and then we've seen this happen in the past. I mean, I'm not accusing anybody, but it's still fresh in my mind, where people rally other the Muslim community based on, oh, this is we've been oppressed, we've been discriminated, and it's time for us to take power and change the rules and change the bylaws, blah blah blah, and all the stuff. And then when they were in power, all of a sudden, the other people feel like oppressed and feel like discriminated and all this stuff. So really, this is not about a tool that you could use to gain power. This is about an issue that needs to be addressed, so we can bring all the people together, especially our youth, where they feel like they are welcome in their schools, in their masjid, and in their community centers. So Hajar, if you were in charge and we say, Hajar, give us your blueprint, give us the roadmap forward. So what would be Minister Hajar plan to put us on the right track?
That's a big question. I think it's okay. There's a couple of things that came to mind when you asked me the question. Is one, I kind of found put on the spot because I didn't think about it. I'm that far. But I think what's going on is that a lot of times when these conversations are happening and we talk about racism and discrimination, when we're trying to figure out solutions, and they're not easy solutions, we tend to depend on the people who are like, if we're talking about anti-Blackness, we tend to turn back and be like, all right, Black people, what do you think we should do? Right? And then I could tell you, we should have more Black imams. We should talk a lot more about, Black History Month. We should have representation. We should create safe spaces for everyone to have it. All the imams and everybody who is prominent in power needs to talk about this as an ummah issue. We need to have more representation when it comes to teachers in school. We need to have courses. We need to interact in a much more vibrant way. We need to treat the masjid as the Jami', Allah's house, as everybody's house. Like, I could have all these different bits and pieces, but I think also at the same time, for me, is what do we need to do as a community? First and foremost is create the safe spaces in order for all of us to have these tough conversations, so that these vulnerabilities are shared and are shown, and clear recommendations and work moving forward starts happening, right? One of the major issues that we have is that we try to jump to solutions before we hear what the actual deeper problems are. We need to know what the root causes are. what the issues are. How is everybody feeling? I need to hear, I need Iman to share what she just shared. I need other people to share what they just shared. What are the issues? What are the things that you're facing? And what is happening? And up until we start creating these safe spaces in the community, in order for us to talk about taboo subjects, taboo issues, problems that are happening, we're not going to grow as a community. We're not going to flourish as a community. We need to allow those who are in the fringes to feel safe to be part of it and to be heard. And today, I think I was at the Akram Juma, and the khutbah by Imam Fayaz, what he talked about today is we need to have tough conversations. Then he talked about the responsibility of the imams and people in power to actually listen. When someone comes and asks you something, do not dismiss them. You have to listen. It is your job to listen. And then 3 is that we need to create the spaces. And he did exactly what I'm saying, right? Create the spaces for us to have these conversations, because he knew what he was doing. He knew that this is a very tough conversation. In order for us to, as you said, Minister Hajar comes in to put in the blueprint of what we need to do. I need to first and foremost have the community trust that I could do what I need to do by allowing them to actually share, be heard, see that they're being heard, and take what they say and make it work. So I think the number one thing is that we need to create those safe spaces in the community for them to say what they need to say. We need to make it that we're not having, we need to make it that the students don't feel that they need to walk out again. We need to make it that the students actually feel that when they go and they talk or they say something, that someone, it's being heard. And I also, on that point, I want to make something very clear. I think we're supposed to be extremely proud of these students. These students just showed how incredibly brilliant and intelligent they are, right? How they're working through the education system. Even when you talk to some of them, they're like, I love my teachers who I'm working with, but I'm having issues with these bits and pieces here. And I think whenever we have these discussions, everybody kind of looks at it, not through a spectrum, but through very right and wrong, black or white. So they kind of be like, it's either you love the school or you hate the school. It's either you do this, it's left or right. That's not what the issue is. There's a lot of amazing, incredible, beautiful things that are going on in the Islamic school. Incredible teachers and incredible administrators who are part of it. We could also do better. We could always do better. And that is what the question is that how do we do better? Because even when you do and you allow the safe spaces, not just in the community, but also in the school to allow the teachers themselves to share, because I'm 100% positive. When you allow that safe space, you will hear teachers be like, I noticed this too, but I couldn't really say. I've seen this happen. We're trying to do. It's allowing that to flourish because, mashallah, incredibly fantastic kids, right? Which tells you there's incredible work being done, but it could be better. And I think that's it. We're always trying to be better. And this is what we're trying to be. We're always trying to be the best. And may Allah give us the strength to be the best. So, yeah, Minister Hajar says, listen to the people, listen to what the issues are, and then we work from there, right? I would love to hear what Minister Iman would love to say as well.
That was exactly how I was wanting to ask. Go ahead. You picked up the word out of my mouth. So, Minister Iman, we need you to help us out here to come up with the plan.
Well, I hate politics and politicians in general, but for this case, I'll just say one thing. One thing I really just want to say, Hajar, I really like that you said this, like, we do have good things. Like, I'm tired of people looking at these conversations of like inequality and inequity in our society as like a black and white spectrum or wrong and right spectrum. Yes, racism is wrong. This is an issue, but we do also have great things. What I loved most about being in my junior high, even though I got bullied in a racist way quite a bit, was actually that I was connected to my faith, that I was with people who formed my identity for my faith anyway. It was nice. It was really great. And I would have loved to continue that through high school too, if possible. But the bullying was just really bad. And I do want to say that when I went to public school, it got a lot better because I saw more people that were brown, and they were, and particularly the Sikh community, which I know weren't Muslims, but that's a very strong community that empowers people. And I have to say that a lot of friends that I made really made me love my race and my culture, which was the exact opposite of my experience in Al Madina. But yes, having that Islamic connection was perfect. But I really just wanted to say, I think the biggest thing that we need to focus on here is equity. So equality is great, but the reality is that every person is different, and equality is going to look different. But everybody has different needs as well, so we need to consider that. So there's, I mean, I'm not sure about the numbers, but perhaps I assume there's a bigger Arab Muslim population than Black Muslim population in Alberta and Calgary. So how do we look at this from an equity lens? How do we make sure that everybody has the right opportunities and isn't discriminated against? So we need to have that approach where we're not thinking of it as favoring a community, but rather we're trying to have a peaceful society where everybody is respected, and where we give them dignity. So we need them to be involved. So that might mean that even if they're a minority, they still have like those positions, whether it's on the board or, making policy or whatever it might be. So I think we definitely need an equity lens. And I'm really, really tired of people being like, oh, you're just giving, like, you consistently hear this as women, like, oh, you just want to hire a woman into like man roles that they don't really fit, that they're not good enough for, like you hear this sexist stuff all the time. And this is the same thing, like that's obviously more focused on sexism, but we're talking about racism here. And in mainstream media, you even see, oh, you're just trying to put more Black people in the limelight, and they just complain, blah, blah, blah. Like you hear this all the time, but this isn't a conversation about complaining. People aren't, like, these kids aren't going out on the streets and being like, we want better services in our school, and we want to be treated fairly for attention. I saw that a lot. I saw a lot of negative comments about kids wanting attention. Do you know how easy it is to get attention these days?
Yeah,
like,
so easy, yes.
World of social media, they're on TikTok, Instagram.
That's right.
If they want to get famous, they're not going to go on global news. Okay, so this is a serious issue, and we need to take it serious. So let's please focus on equity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and probably if I can add to it, this is maybe an opportunity for our community leaders, whomever they are. This is a wake-up call for how important these issues. Inshallah, soon we're gonna see an end to these battles and lawsuits over stuff like that, because really we have much bigger issues to work for. As Iman says, and as Hajar says, that's hopefully that's going to be solved soon, or enough is enough, because all what we hear is it's lawsuit after a lawsuit after lawsuit, and it's just like very embarrassing. Versus kids going, our voice must be heard, and that's really the call. And this is the slogan that we want to leave with everyone tonight: is their voices must be heard. And for me, definitely, I heard it loud and clear. Hajar, we're gonna end this session shortly here. What's your message to the parents? Because I really think this is not a masjid problem. This is not a school problem. This is where it all started. So what would be your direct message to parents?
I think what happens is there's a lot of nurture and nature going on in a lot of these places. I think my message to the parents is that, I'm not going to say be better, because a lot of people always say be better, right? Is always be conscious of what you're saying. And then, like Iman said, we're always talking about equity and equality and justice. We're always talking about raising kids who, they're not colorblind, but who should be aware of injustices. But you also want to raise children who are good allies, who know how to speak up to truth and know how to stand up to justice. That doesn't mean because you speak to the truth and you stand up to justice that you're rude or you're inconsiderate or you fight other people. I think parents should allow their children to feel safe enough for them to share with them their issues that they're going through, but also at the same time encourage them to speak up when something is wrong, right? Let them know what are the principles and the basics of being a decent human being, right? We're all trying to be decent human beings who stand up to the truth and say what needs to be said. So I think a lot of the times parents need to kind of put their prejudices outside the door. The cultural practices, traditional practices, things like, right? Our grandparents did this. You're telling me that my dad was wrong? We're human. We're fallible. Yes, it could be wrong. And that's perfectly okay. I read a great quote this morning, and it says ليست الحقيقة قاسية ولكن الانفلات من الجهل مؤلم كالولادة. And it translates to truth. It says the problem is that truth is not harsh, but the liberation from ignorance is like being born. It's like giving birth. It hurts. And so you're trying to speak truth, but at the same time, you have to liberate yourself from the ignorance that you have. And you have to understand that we all could be wrong, and you could be wrong, and what you're doing is detrimental and it needs to change. And I think that allowing that ability to say that, yes, this was wrong and I'm able to do it. So parents exemplifying, learning and unlearning things to their children is something that is essential to the way that we practice and we go. And expose your kids to other cultures and other people in a positive manner. I think it's very important as well. And that goes to everybody.
Well said. Iman, any advice, anything you would like to add to parents?
Yeah, I think parents have probably the biggest role in this conversation as we're talking about kids here. And like, no child is born racist, and it's not necessarily like those biases that were, essentially starting at 6 months that develop that, because this comes actually from a hate perspective. It's not just like not knowing the other person. It's like you actually don't like that person. So I would like to tell each parent, I need you to honestly ask yourself, do you think you or people with the same background as you have a superiority complex? This is like an honest conversation. Do you think that you're actually better than other people? Does your culture consistently have things that it mentions? I can give you an example of my culture. For example, I have a 1-year-old daughter, and I really want her to listen to nursery rhymes in my language, which is Urdu, because I want her to pick up on it. And I found some on YouTube, and every single cartoon was white-skinned. Okay, they white-skinned, blue eyes, and we look nothing like that. We're not white. We don't have blue eyes, and we don't have blonde hair or even brown hair. Some of us are light, but not that many. And then on top of that, a lot of our language, like some of the nursery rhymes are talking about like black thieves. Like if you're talking about thieves, why do you need to put black in front of it? Like, where is this coming from? Consistently putting the word black in negative things, and like the black skin color. Most of the time, the drawings weren't actually like African black people. They were just dark-skinned South Asians. But regardless, it's that same idea of anti-blackness, regardless of your race. Like, why is blackness looked as a negative thing? So why are lighter skins considered more superior? And same with their culture. So does your culture have a superiority complex? Do you think, and does your culture and you personally, and do you teach this to your kids? Do you teach your kids, like, you tell them stories about black people or brown people or whatever people, or Chinese people even, that are like really negative, and you like sum it up as like, all people are like this, all Chinese are like this? I saw this a lot when COVID-19 started. Like, I saw this a lot in my personal community, where they're like, oh, it's because they eat anything about Chinese people.
Oh, yeah.
The same topic. We're talking about racism here. Like, you're adding on to the conversation. So do you personally think you're better as a culture or a race? Because that's where the problem begins, and you need to do something about it, and you need to make sure you're not passing it on to your kids, because you're just making society worse.
And I do want to add to what Hajar said previously. Like, within our culture, sometimes we say things without even thinking. We're not racist, but we don't pay attention to the word we're saying. But really, for the people of different background, these words might be super sensitive, but we just say it. Like, she mentioned a few words about like a black slave, Abed, Aswad, blah blah blah. We didn't think about it, but it really hurts. And I think it's really important for us to start educate ourselves and educate our loved one kids, and try to work toward the solution, because this problem is here and it's not gonna go away. And all we can do is minimize it, make people aware of it, and provide all the tools so people can learn how to overcome these issues. So in the end, I think our hour is up. I understand we all have other commitments, but I really want to thank you all. I want to thank you, Hajar. I want to thank you, Iman. And I really want to thank you for 2 reasons. Number one, for being here tonight, but also for helping me out, being so cautious in every word we say because we don't want to create a so-called unpleasant experience for all of us. So I can see how careful we are picking up the word, and that really is how careful are we picking up these words, and that really reflect how sensitive this subject is. So we're not going to deny it. This is just a start of a conversation, and I'm sure it's going to be other people. I want to acknowledge there's so many other organizations already doing that. I want to send my really sincere applaud to Neda Maray, a person who did so much to bring this issue to the surface. She called for so many initiatives. She called for so many guests. She called for so many meetings, and we need to support that kind of work Neda and other people are doing to bring this issue to surface. If you allow me to finish with one thing, I would like to also thanks the students who stood up for their rights, and they really send us a very strong message. Really, if there's any word just to say thank you enough for them, I think we owe them so much. As much as I'm proud to see that kind of like a promising future community leaders. I just want to make sure that, and I want to tell them your voice for me and for the people that with me tonight. Absolutely, we heard you loud and clear, and that's why we're doing what we're doing tonight, to support you and be with you and to work with you and learn from you as well. So your final word to Ayman and Hajar, and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Sam, for starting this conversation. I know it's not easy, and I really hope you don't take any heat from this, so like people aren't mean to you, but I really think you're an excellent ally in terms of, starting these conversations, because that's how they start. And thank you, Hajar, for being part of this conversation. You add so much, and you're absolutely brilliant, and you're a great leader in our community. So thank you, and I hope you continue doing the work, which I'm sure you will. So thank you, and also thanks everyone for listening in. This is step one, just having this conversation, but take it to your kitchen table or wherever you talk to people in your family with. Have this conversation with your family, and that's how we'll start this. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ayman. Hajar?
I think I'll just echo Iman. Thank you so much for having me. And likewise, Iman is an incredible leader with the organization and all the work that she's been doing. So I'm very proud to be here. And thank you, Sam, for allowing this to happen. And I think what I really want to, parting words for everybody, like as you said, this is the beginning of many conversations and dialogues for us to have in the community. This is a very difficult conversation. It's a very sensitive one. And it gets people fired up in many different ways. And that's a good thing, because that means we're actually releasing, and then we're going to allow for more things to happen. So I'm looking forward to a lot more of these conversations, and I'm looking a lot to conversations that are a lot more specific as well. And this has been great. So thank you so much. Thank you.
And hopefully in the next election, we're going to see you on the board, both of you, because we do need your voices and you need your wisdoms and your expertise to work with the community. Honestly, I think that's a call for you guys to consider being part of the process, because I think that's how you bring change as well. So thank you very much for your time. Thanks everyone for being here with us tonight. And inshallah, we will definitely work together for betterment of this community. Jazakumullah khair, and I wish you a happy weekend. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.